Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I thought I would share a book review for a book that I have read recently because I haven't done one of these in a while. Firstly, sorry if the lighting is, as usual, really truly terrible. I'm basically using natural light and it is a grey, horrible, cold, rainy October day when I'm filming this. I know people are like, oh, fall is amazing and I fall in love with fall and best of all, I love fall or whatever people say, and I'm so happy that we live in a world with Octobers, whatever the weird American people say. Well, it's not fall, it's autumn. And autumn is horrible. It's cold and it's grey and it's rainy and it's miserable. And that's why the lighting is terrible. That's my excuse. Anyway. Also, because I wanted to have some books in the background, because I thought that was appropriate for a book review video, my camera is propped up on two toolboxes and 4 books, and my microphone is propped up on an anthology of American literature. So if the sound goes funny, it's probably because my microphone has fallen off, and if the video goes funny, it's probably because I've just destroyed my expensive camera by propping it up on toolboxes. Anyway, that's enough for the disclaimer. The book is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This is one of those books that I've heard the name of, and so I assumed that it was a much older book than it is. It was actually published in 2011, but there was a film that came out in 2017 that was directed by Steven Spielberg that seemed to be really successful in terms of the box office, but I never actually saw it and didn't really hear much about it as to whether or not it was any good. But that's probably why the name of the book was in my brain, and I assumed it was an older, more established book and author. But no, it was just from 2011. So fairly recently I read Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, and this is a slightly older book. So this was published in 1977, I think. And it's that Ender's Game is about a young boy who is pulled into a fight between humanity and an alien invasion, but it's played out kind of like a game, and there's a series of games and battles that he has to go through in order to defeat the enemy. So in my head, Ready Player One was going to be something similar to that, and although there's slight similarities, they're actually quite different. So Ready Player One. So like I said, it was published in 2011, and on the cover there's a quote from USA Today which says that it's enchanting and it's Willy Wonka meets the Matrix. Now, you may or may not go to USA Today for your book reviews and book suggestions, but actually that quote is pretty apt. Willy Wonka meets the Matrix is a pretty good description of what this book is like. Like I said, it was a film or a movie in 2017, but although I can see a lot of ways in which the ideas and the visuals would make a good film, it really read more like a video game, which is actually quite apt given the contents of the book. Ready Player One is set in 2044 in the not too distant future where poverty, disease, famine are widespread and reality is fairly grim. 18-year-old Wade Watt, who's a high school student, escapes his reality by jacking into the Oasis, this online virtual reality where you can live, learn, love, fight, explore any of one of tens of thousands of other planets where there's magic, where there's fighting, where there's robots, where there's games, where there's things to explore. And that's how he and most of the population of the planet survive in a world which is fairly unpleasant and miserable to actually live in. Wade lives in a trailer with his aunt, and several other families live in the same trailer, and it's actually called the Stacks. So it's actually on the cover of the version of the book that I have is the stack of trailers. So it's a trailer on top of a trailer on top of a trailer, you know, maybe 20 or 40 or whatever stories high, all precariously balanced on top of each other. So every morning he has to climb down ladders over trailers, 20 trailers or whatever, just to leave the trailer in the morning and go to school. But he actually goes to school in Oasis, so it's an online virtual school where his avatar, because everyone has their own avatar with their own avatar's name and visual appearance and items and gear and everything, his avatar sits in a classroom and learns from avatars of his teachers who teach him various subjects. Wade is also a gunter. that is an egg hunter who's searching Oasis for the hidden Easter egg left there by the founder, James Halliday. Halliday died 5 years ago with a vast fortune but no heir. So he set up this Easter egg for whoever can solve the riddles that are hidden within Oasis, this incredibly vast reality. Solve the riddles and find the Easter egg. Whoever does that will then get control of not only his vast fortune, but also control of Oasis to do with whatever they want to. So Wade and all the other Gunters out there are searching for this Easter egg. They're also up against this corporation known as the Sixes, because all their avatars just look exactly the same, but they all have their like employee number that starts with a 6, so they're known as Sixes. They are also trying to find the egg with vast resources to do so, but they have signed over the rights. So if they actually find the egg themselves, they have to sign it. They have to give it and the money and the control of the Oasis to their corporation. So it's kind of individual versus this vast corporation that's trying to take over something that brings people joy and freedom in a time where actual reality is fairly grim to live in. So it's kind of pitted, I guess, kind of like a David and Goliath kind of a vibe to it, or the individual up against a faceless corporation, that kind of thing. So for 5 years, millions of people around the world have been searching to try and find this Easter egg with absolutely no luck. The only clue they had was the riddle that Halliday left in his kind of video will when he died, which no one's really been able to decipher. Then Wade, using some of his knowledge of Halliday, managed to stumble across the first key, so the first part of the puzzle. He then becomes wealthy, famous, but now has a target on his back in both the online Oasis world and in the real world, because now people are after him because they want to stop him from winning the competition. As James Halliday was obsessed with 1980s pop culture, there are references to 1980s films, books and games all throughout the book. All of the puzzles and the riddles and the elements of the search for the Easter egg that Halliday hid inside Oasis is all based on the 1980s and the 1980s popular culture. So it's Wade's knowledge of both Halliday and the things that he loved, but also on 1980s films and computer games and things that enable him to be able to take part in the competition and actually manage to get ahead in the competition. As such, like I said, the book is just filled with references to the 1980s, a lot of which were lost on me, like the lyrics to Rush songs. It just didn't really mean anything to me. And there's a lot of them. For the most part, they're really explained in the book. So it says exactly, this is the film that this came from, this is the name of the film and the actors and the date that it was released, these are all the details of the song and the band, like everything's very signposted. This is a 1980s reference and big flashing lights all the way throughout the book, which makes it feel a little bit clunky. Now I know the 1980s is very in right now, but when you watch a program like Stranger Things, which obviously in many ways spearheaded this resurgence of 1980s popular culture, you don't necessarily need to get all the references. You're just immersed in that world. They're not references in the 1980s, it just is the 1980s. So it's much more natural. And if you don't get the references, it doesn't matter, because you're still enjoying the story about people being eaten by squiggly monsters that come out of the wherever. And if you do get the references, then it's just like an added bonus of nostalgia for you along the way. Whereas this, it felt quite forced. Like there were a lot of references, and if you didn't get them, it was okay because they were explained. But then that meant that if you did get them, it's just kind of annoying because they're explaining something. There's not a lot of in-jokes, I guess, which is kind of good because I wouldn't have got them. So it's just, it felt a little bit awkward, I think, the writing style and the way that the references to the 1980s popular culture is kind of forced in the book at all times. It also seems kind of unrealistic to me that Wade, who's only 18, and the other characters in the book, who are all mostly kind of a similar age, the people that he meets and his friends and things, they're all kind of a similar age, would have such an extensive knowledge of the 1980s. Now, he did say with Halliday's death and the Easter egg and the egg hunt, it created this resurgence in the 1980s, and suddenly the games and the films and everything were everywhere, and he has watched all these films at least 17 times, so he knows all the words. But that just seemed a little bit unbelievable to me. I just don't believe that you could watch all the films of the 1980s 17 times and learn all the words and not just be, I don't know, go insane with the knowledge in your brain. Like, I don't know how you would necessarily retain so much information, because the puzzles that he has to solve, they're not really puzzles as such. It's more things like knowing the lines of the dialogue of a film from the 1980s. So War Games, a film in the 1980s, at one point he has to be able to say all the lines of dialogue for one of the characters at the exact same time and the exact same tone and inflection that that character had said it in the film. So it's relying on kind of obscure knowledge, but a very in-depth and wide-ranging obscure knowledge. And I'm not saying that that film is necessarily obscure, because I'd already heard of it and other people probably have heard of it as well, but I find it hard to believe that he would have that level of knowledge required to be able to pass the tests that are in the competition and in the book. The other thing that I didn't quite get about the competition is that I didn't really understand the point of it. Obviously, James Halliday died and he wanted someone to give his vast fortune to and control of the Oasis to. But none of it was really testing how well people knew and loved Oasis. None of it was really testing that the person was a good person, a brave person, an intelligent person. You know, what a normal kind of competition of this manner would be testing is that you have your heart is true and you deserve to win somehow. It just seemed to be testing that people played a lot of 1980s arcade games, which maybe that was the point, but it seemed kind of an odd thing. I kind of wanted the more of the tests, more of the puzzles, more of the things, the stages that they had to go through to be more a test of character in some way, rather than just being able to recite words from a film or win a video game against essentially a computer at times. So I didn't quite get that element of it. So the other major element of the book is obviously the Oasis, which is this vast online virtual reality that basically millions of people around the world are able to log into free of charge. They can then go to any of tens of thousands of planets. They can learn there, go to school there, they can fall in love there, they can fight and have battles. There's magic, there's spaceships, there's giant robots, there's replicas of 1980s video arcade game halls, if that's what you want. There's kind of everything, and it becomes people's reality. And this is kind of the part of the book that was perhaps a bit more interesting and perhaps prescient in 2011. Well, really prescient in the 1911. At a time when people are spending obviously a lot more time online on social media, and when what is reality becomes quite questionable. Fantasy and reality have become kind of hard to differentiate at times, and we spend a lot more of our times online, logged in at all times, without really sleeping, without really having the normal kind of day-night routine and human contact. This is a huge chunk of what this book is about. So people are relying on the Oasis to give them an escape from their reality, and then it becomes their reality. There were times when I was reading the book that I forgot that he was in the Oasis, or Oasis, whatever it's called. That I forgot that he was online, and it wasn't IRL, as it were. And that's kind of, I think, the point of the book, that it becomes more meaningful than the real world. And there are people that he's best friends with and that he fights alongside and that he goes to the competition with that he's never actually met in real life, even though he considers them his closest friends and allies. And I think that is a big chunk of the book that gets lost in a lot of the references to 1980s popular culture, which to me should be kind of a cute add-on and like a quirk and not like the main focus of the book. Whereas it's more interesting talking about the other stuff, about logging into the Oasis and the effect that has on people's lives. And as everyone is logged into this fantasy world, the real world is actually kind of crumbling and no one's really maintaining it or caring about it anymore. And those elements were more interesting to me as I was reading the book. I found the ending of the book a bit underwhelming as well. I had actually got into the book. I know that I've been sort of critical of it, but I had actually got into it. I was reading it really quickly. I was whizzing my way through. I wanted to find out what happened. I wanted to see what the challenges were. I wanted to see who won and what happened, although it's not that shocking. You can kind of figure out who's going to win. Spoiler. But I think the ending was kind of not done very well. It was kind of underwhelming. I think that the author's decision to kind of isolate the characters right at the end so that they were on their own meant that we were kind of denied the final showdown between the characters kind of on the side of good and then on the side of evil, kind of the individual against the corporation, as it were. And that just seemed like an odd choice, and it just kind of seems to kind of the book fizzles out at the end. I have seen online that I think it was 2017, probably around the time the film came out, the author Ernest Cline did say that he was working on a sequel. I said it too many times now and the words lost all meaning. He was working on a second book to follow this book, and it was going to follow the same characters and have 1980s references, but not have the competition. So that to me sounds not great, but I guess we'll see. It's been 2 years and I don't think anything's been released, so we'll see. If it does come out, I might read it just to see what it's like, but I always say that, and then I have just like all the other books to read. So we'll see. It was a okay read. It was good. It had some good elements. I just think the 1980s references were kind of clunky and I wasn't totally convinced by the writing style. So, 3 out of 5? I don't know. I give everything 3 out of 5. It was alright. If anyone else has read the book and has any really exciting thoughts, please share them in the comments below. If you have any book reviews, book suggestions, please also leave those in the comments below. If you've liked the video, please give it a like. And if you'd like to see more videos, please subscribe.